You are watching The Info Show. If you like the content, please like and subscribe. Don't forget to support our sponsors. Now, let's get to the topic. I was wrong, says juror who voted to sentence Melissa Lucio to death. Just weeks ahead of Melissa Lucio's scheduled execution, one juror who voted to sentence Miss Lucio to death in 2008 wrote that he feels deep regret in an op-ed published by the Houston Chronicle. Johnny Galvin Jr. said that at the time of Miss Lucio's trial, he did not want to sentence her to death because he felt that Miss Lucio's defense lawyers were hardly making a case for her life. When jurors took their first vote on Miss Lucio's sentence, they were evenly divided, Mr. Galvin recalled. After a second vote, he was the lone holdout, advocating for a life sentence. However, he felt pressured by his fellow jurors and ultimately voted for a death sentence alongside the others. I wish I had never done so, he wrote in the op-ed. Miss Lucio has spent the last 14 years on death row in Texas, convicted of murdering her 2-year-old daughter who died 2 days after an accidental fall downstairs. The state of Texas plans to execute Miss Lucio on April 27, 2022. Her legal team filed a clemency petition on March 22nd, citing new expert evidence that supports Miss Lucio's innocence to the Texas Board of Pardons and Paroles and Governor Greg Abbott. There are so many problems in this case that I believe she must not be executed, Mr. Galvin said. Mr. Galvin said the majority of the prosecution's argument at trial rested on Miss Lucio's confession, but that the jury was not told about the aggressive tactics used in the interrogation, nor Miss Lucio's history as a survivor of abuse, which made her vulnerable to falsely confessing when faced with such tactics. He added that the jury was never told that Miss Lucio asserted her innocence more than 100 times during the 5-hour interrogation. No evidence was presented of that, and it would have mattered to me, he wrote. Since learning about all the things we jurors were never told when we held Lucio's life in our hands, I see her as a woman who had a hard life and many struggles, who could have been anyone in my community. Mr. Galvin said he was led to believe that the medical examiner had scientific proof of abuse and that he and his fellow jurors were not aware there were other medical explanations for the child's bruises, which the medical examiner claimed with certainty could have only been caused by abuse. We jurors did not know there was another medical explanation for the baby's bruises, that experts couldn't say for sure she had a bite mark on her back, or that she could have broken her arm in a fall or roughhousing with her brothers and sisters. We were told it was clear that Lucio did those things, he wrote. The fact that District Attorney Armando Villalobos, who prosecuted Miss Lucio's case, is now serving a 13-year federal sentence for bribery and extortion, only adds to my belief that our decision in Lucio's case was wrong, Mr. Galvin said. If I had known all of this information, or even part of it, I would have stood by my vote for life, no matter what anyone else on the jury said. But it seems some of my fellow jurors would also have voted differently if they knew all the information about Lucio's life, her interrogation, and the facts surrounding the child's death that the lawyers should have told us, he wrote. In recent months, 4 jurors, including Mr. Galvin, have given statements saying they would support relief for Miss Lucio due to their grave concerns about evidence that was withheld from them at Miss Lucio's capital trial. These statements were included in the clemency petition filed by Miss Lucio's legal team. Last year, 83 members of the Texas House of Representatives, the majority of its members, spoke out in support of clemency for Ms. Lucio. Lawmakers from both sides of the aisle signed a letter asking Governor Greg Abbott and the Texas Board of Pardons and Paroles to grant Ms. Lucio clemency. Some 225 anti-domestic violence and anti-sexual assault organizations and 130 Texas faith leaders have also called for clemency for Ms. Lucio, who is a devout Catholic. 26 death row exonerees, including Sabrina Butler Smith, who was wrongly convicted and sentenced to death for the murder of her child in Mississippi, have advocated for clemency too. Mr. Galvin said he wishes he had known the truth when he sat on Ms. Lucio's jury, writing, "The idea that my decision to take another person's life was not based on complete and accurate information in a fair trial is horrifying." He hopes that Governor Abbott and the Texas Board of Pardons and Paroles will hear his plea. There are so many problems in this case that I believe she must not be executed. Since 1973, 186 individuals who spent time on death row have been exonerated. This includes 16 people convicted and sentenced to death in Texas, according to the Death Penalty Information Center. There also is a strong evidence that the state of Texas has executed innocent people, including Carlos de Luna, Ruben Cantu, Cameron Willingham, Gary Graham, aka Shaka Sankofa, and most recently, Larry Swearingen, who was put to death in August of 2019. So this is a tragic story, tragic situation. But I think several reasons have been presented pertaining to why clemency should be granted to Ms. Lucio. The term clemency can be unclear to some people. Clemency simply means showing mercy. Clemency in matters of crime and justice does not automatically mean the convicted person's sentence is pardoned. I think some people may think that, but that's not the case. Clemency can take three forms. It can be a reprieve, which is a temporary delay in the suspension of punishment. It can be a pardon, which is a complete forgiveness and restoration of full rights of citizenship. Or it can be a commutation of sentence, which is a reduction of a sentence to a lesser period of time. And in most cases, pardons and commutations are granted only because of exceptional circumstances. If the sentences were unjust, if there's proof of innocence or a lack of evidence of guilt, or if the law itself was antiquated or against public policy. So in the light of that information, what clemency is most appropriate in this case? Or does Ms. Lucio not deserve any mercy at all, in your opinion? Do you think she should at the very least receive a new trial that would provide all the evidence that was left out in her initial proceedings? I'd love to hear what you think. Please leave your comments below, and I'll see you in the next video.